Dangerous Identity Politics. I'm Brian Lilley with TheRebel.media. Behind me is the Supreme Court. This is an institution that I've had a lot of issues with over the years. I've had a lot of issues with many of their decisions. But one thing I haven't had issue with is their ability to hear cases in either of Canada's two official languages. The Supreme Court has a superb translation team that translates documents from one language to the other. The plaintiff, the people appearing before the court, can put forward documents in whichever language they choose. They can be translated by the court. They can be translated ahead of time. And judges are able to hear cases in both languages through simultaneous translation. But the Supreme Court could change, and it could change for the worse if plans by both the New Democrats and the Liberals come to bear. Justin Trudeau's plan for real change has 32 different points, but a subset of one of the points on how he will appoint Supreme Court justices includes saying that judges must be functionally bilingual. The NDP, well, they have their own petition going on their website saying Supreme Court justices must be bilingual. Let me read to you from it. They ask you to put your voice to something that says that French and English are the official languages of Canada, and that the Supreme Court of Canada has recognized their equality. That the Supreme Court exists to serve Canadians from across the country, regardless of whether their official spoken language is English or French. That the Supreme Court is the highest judicial body in Canada, and that certain important causes are brought before its 9 judges. That Canadian laws are written simultaneously in both official languages, and that one version does not take precedence over the other. That simultaneous interpretation and translation have their limits. Well, let me ask you this. The laws that the members of Parliament vote on, they're written in both official languages, but the members of Parliament rely on simultaneous translation and translation services, interpretation. If they can't pass the laws in using those services, then why should the judges here have to be bilingual? So the NDP's argument would essentially call for all MPs in the future to be bilingual if you take it to its natural extension. Of course, they wouldn't do that. That would upset too many of their Quebec members who don't really speak English. And see, the idea of the Supreme Court all being bilingual, a lot of people say this just means they're only going to have French justices on. According to Stats Canada, only 40% of Quebecers are bilingual, which means 60% aren't. A good number of them are going to be lawyers as well. So 17.5% of Canadians report that they can have a conversation in both official languages. 40% of Quebecers say they can have a conversation in both official languages. But having a conversation doesn't even qualify as being functionally bilingual, as the Liberals call for, or even officially bilingual as the NDP would have. Well, what is that going to mean? It's going to mean an awful lot of good legal minds being passed over in favor of more people from the Ottawa and Montreal Old Boys Network that favors those who live in an officially bilingual milieu. Outside of Ottawa and Montreal, there are very few truly bilingual parts of the country. You can go down to Toronto and find lots of judges that don't speak enough French to hear a case in French. You can go to Quebec City and find an awful lot of judges and lawyers that couldn't hear a case in English. Look, there's a big difference between being able to follow a political conversation as I can, or order in a restaurant as I can in a different language. But hearing a court case, the Supreme Court hears criminal cases, it hears tax cases, it hears immigration cases. Each of these distinct bodies of law, and there are more that they examine, have their own jargon. If you cannot rely on a translation service, how are you going to know the jargon of something that you only use once or twice? Beverly McLaughlin, when she was appointed to the court, was not bilingual. There have been Quebec judges who have been appointed to the court who have had to rely on translation services as well. This is a bad idea that was voted down by Parliament, and it's a bad idea that shouldn't be resurrected now. What it will do is keep good people, both francophones and anglophones, off the court, and it will inflame language tensions. It's funny that as this is happening, as both the Liberals and the NDP are calling for increased bilingualism on the court, neither one of them is standing up for the language rights of anglophones in Quebec, who are seeing Bill 101, the French language laws, changed yet again. Why? To force companies that have an English trademark name, like, say, Best Buy, to put a French explainer on it of what the store is, as if people don't know that Best Buy is electronics or Nike are shoes. The Quebec government, under the Liberals, remember this is the Federalist Liberals and Philippe Couillard's government, are going to tighten the screws on Bill 101 again. This isn't the Separatists, these are the Federalists, and not a peep from the Liberals or Conservatives. They're going to stand up for bilingualism outside of Quebec, but they won't stand up for it inside. Remember that as they say that this place behind me has to be more bilingual. They're not going to call for that in their home province of Quebec.